Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Labor Day virtual chocolate tasting experience. My name is Lauren. I'll be your host for tonight. And I will be kind of introducing Tammy Jo, talking about our history of Ethel M, and then going over some ground rules for the experience. So thank you all for joining us. I'm excited to get this Labor Day weekend started a little bit earlier with this tasting. First, I'll go over some ground rules for this experience. So if you've done this before in person, we have tasting room in Henderson, Nevada, and in Glendale, California. You'll know really how interactive it is. So the chocolatier is in a room with you and you kind of just chat about what you're touching when you touch it, what you're smelling, what you're tasting, if you're liking it, different things like that. So to supplement that, I would love for you to use the chat box below and talk about different things that you're tasting, what you're smelling. Everyone's palate is different, so you can all taste and smell different things. It's kind of interesting to see what everyone is getting. If you have any questions throughout this tasting, please use the Q&A function below. So I will be monitoring that as well as Tammy Jo. And at the very end, we will answer any questions that you have, but that's the best way for us to monitor that. Since we can't see or hear you, we would love for you to take out your phones right now and take a picture of your chocolate in front of you, how you have your setup, who you're doing this with. We miss that interaction with all of you. So please tag us on social media on Instagram or Facebook at Ethel M Chocolates and hashtag Ethel M Chocolates so we can see that. Lastly, if you wait until the very end of the tasting, I have a discount code I can talk to you all about and some upcoming tastings as well. So make sure you stay till the very end after all the questions so I can talk to you all about that. And it looks like a lot of you are joining us from the Midwest, which is awesome. We have some West Coast, some on the East, so that's awesome. We're all joining you from Las Vegas or Henderson. So if you're not already familiar, I'll go into a little bit about our history. So our factory is based out of Henderson, Nevada. And you'll see that top left photo is Forrest Mars Sr. And he actually started Ethel M Chocolates after he retired from the Mars Chocolate Candy Company that he started with his father, Frank Mars. And they did the candy M&M's, Skittles, Twix, Snickers, all that good stuff that you may have heard of before, maybe not. Pretty popular, but after he retired, he moved to Henderson, Nevada in search for a little bit of a warmer climate and started Ethel M Chocolates in honor of his mother, Ethel Mars. So he started using recipes that they would make together in their kitchen in Tacoma, Washington that date all the way back to 1911. And we still use some of these recipes to this day, so that's pretty special. And you'll see in that middle photo is where we're located. So we're just outside of Las Vegas in Henderson. We're about 15 minutes away from the Strip. You'll see it in the background of that middle photo. And then that's also a really beautiful aerial shot of our factory and garden. So our garden is just outside of our factory. It's about 3 acres. So beautiful in the springtime, especially in the wintertime. We have our holiday season from November 6th to January 3rd, and we decorate the entire garden with over 1 million LED lights. It is beautiful. It's breathtaking to see. Every year we do a holiday lighting ceremony where we turn all the lights on at one time for the first time of the season, kind of kicking off our holiday season. This year, for the first time ever, we are taking it virtual. I'm so excited to show everyone the magic of our holiday season. It's truly beautiful. We're gonna do a little tasting kit similar to what you guys ordered tonight, but it will also have hot chocolate and our holiday sampler. And we're gonna have Mark Mackey hosting that. So it'll be fun to see him do a tutorial. If you haven't tried our hot chocolate, you are missing out. It is absolutely amazing. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. We're gonna be releasing information on our social media or through email. So if you're not already following us, go ahead and follow us to be the first to know about that. The last thing I will talk to is our solar panel garden, which is just outside of our factory. And this is 4.4 acres of solar panels. And it actually powers our factory during its peak production hours. So it generates enough power during our busiest times. We can totally run off of solar power. So feels good knowing that after you eat your entire box of chocolate, at least it was made in a sustainable way, so you don't feel too bad about eating it all. I'm gonna go ahead and introduce Tammy Jo, and she's gonna get into talking to you about the pieces that are sitting in front of you. Hopefully they're all still there. I know they smell amazing. They are amazing. I can't wait for you to try them. So Tammy Jo has been with us for 20 years, which is almost half the time we had been a company. We started in 1981. So it's absolutely insane. She's been with us through it all. She started on the factory side. giving tours of the factory so she knows how all the pieces are made, how all the machines work, everything like that. And now she's on our retail side, giving tours of the garden as well, hosting tastings like these daily, training associates, and continuing her education of chocolate through Mars. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Tammy Jo.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tammy Jo. Like Lauren says, I have been with the company for over 20 years, and I am a professional chocolate eater. So today, we're going to go over some of my favorite pieces. We're going to learn how to eat them the right way. There is a right way to eat chocolate. Normally, we're just in such a rush to get it because it's so good that we just like eat it right away. Well, we're not going to do that today. I'm going to make you eat chocolate slower than you've ever eaten chocolate before. And the benefits of that are all the different flavors and layers of flavor in the chocolate that you're going to notice today. So let's go over how we're going to do our tasting. So make sure that your box is open and you have it ready to go. Get out your placemat, your pen. Make sure you get a bottle of water to cleanse your palate in between each new piece of chocolate. And we're going to go over the guidelines on how to enjoy the chocolate, okay? So step number one is going to be touch and feel. So what we're going to do is we're going to touch the chocolate. We're going to feel it. We're going to talk about whether it's smooth or bumpy. What does it feel like? Then we're going to smell our chocolate. So 70 to 80% of our taste actually comes from our smell. So by taking that deep breath of chocolate, you're going to heighten your taste buds. You're going to heighten your taste. You're going to get your mouth prepared for all of those flavors. Okay. So step number three is, of course, we're going to take a bite. So we're going to take a bite, but be mindful of it. Really think about the texture, the taste. How is it melting? Is it melting quickly or slow? Or like, is it, crunchy? Really think about the texture and taste of it. As you're finishing your piece, I'm going to tell you all the fun facts about each piece and how we create it in our factory, okay? And in between each piece, we're going to learn some fun facts. So let's go into our placemat. What are we going to use that placemat for? So the placemat is to help you identify what flavor you're tasting in your piece. We have that little flavor wheel. This is the order in which we're going to eat our chocolate. And then there's a spot on the placemat for name and sight and feel, aroma, taste and texture, and your overall impression. This is going to help you because sometimes when you're eating your chocolate, the first one is going to be amazing. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is my favorite piece. But then when you get to the second piece and the third piece, it kind of changes your mind. And you're like, wait, I think this one's my favorite one. This one's better. I liked this about this piece and like this about that piece. So write down every little detail because it's really fun to go back and look at what you wrote and what really was your favorite and what you liked about each piece. It's really cool. Plus the flavor wheel is really going to help you identify what you're tasting. Sometimes you're eating it and you're like, what? There's this layer of flavor I never thought was there before and I can't quite put you can't quite get the word off your tongue. And so by looking at that, it's really going to help you identify like, okay, it goes into spices. What spice do I taste? And so that's going to open it up. So let's go ahead and start eating right off the bat. We're going to start with eating the chocolate. And then we're going to get into some fun facts about how chocolate's created. We'll eat some more chocolate and then learn some more fun facts. So let's go ahead and start with our first piece of chocolate, which is the vanilla truffle. So this is the piece that we're going to be trying first. Okay, guys? So as you can see, it has like kind of a bumpy texture. It's not really smooth, but it's also rounded. So it is kind of smooth, but like it's bumpy at the same time. And it has kind of like a powder on the outside of it, right? So really try to focus, try to think about what is the powder? What does it taste like? And let's see, use the chat box below. Let's see if you guys can guess what it is. What do you guys smell? Okay, let's smell our chocolate. I smell cooked milk. And of course, vanilla. I smell the cocoa butter. I see someone smells cinnamon. Okay, let's go ahead and take a bite. Let's see if if y'all are right. And sometimes it can taste like nutmeg too. So let us know. All right, let's go ahead and take a bite. Mmm. It's really smooth in the inside. It kind of just melts in your mouth. And that's because of the filling. This is a ganache. It's a truffle. Truffles have a ganache filling. And what that means is it's basically heavy whipping cream and chocolate. And then we add in our flavor to it. It's also the way that it's mixed. So it just kind of has like this silky, smooth, kind of melt in your mouth flavor. It definitely goes into dairy for me. I noticed a lot of dairy, a little bit of roasted, but it's more dairy and creamy butterscotch. I can tell it has that kind of butterscotch flavor, and definitely vanilla. All right, so let's see what we got. We're tasting cocoa. Okay, we're tasting cinnamon. So the powder on the outside of this piece is cocoa powder. So sometimes that bitterness of the cocoa powder mixed with the sweetness of the vanilla is going to bring out flavors of spice like nutmeg or cinnamon, even though that's not what it is, which is quite interesting. It looks like it would be cinnamon. It looks like it could be nutmeg. And the bitterness and the sweetness of the vanilla combined has that similar flavor that those two have. So that's kind of interesting that it isn't either of those, but it can taste that way. And so it's really kind of cool that you did taste the cinnamon, which is really interesting. So let's talk more about how this piece is made. The texture, let's talk about how it gets the texture. So this is a round ball, which means it's a molded piece. Now, normally a molded piece means it's perfectly round and smooth. It's, perfectly round and smooth piece. So how does it get the texture? We actually do that by hand. So we hand roll the truffle, and then we add the cocoa powder when it's still cooling. We sprinkle the cocoa powder on it by hand. So this is a really, really interesting piece. And it goes through a process called the one-shot depositor, which does the filling and chocolate shell all in one shot. And we're gonna go over that again later on. So first off, I wanna start with some fun facts about the trees. Let's learn about where the chocolate comes from. Like, how do we get chocolate? Where does it come from? So we have a clip here that shows you a picture of the tree itself, and you'll be able to see what that looks like. And we're also gonna look at a map so that it can tell you where you can find them. So here is a map that shows you all of the different areas where you can find cacao trees. The dark shaded areas are where they grow. So 20 degrees north and south, only in that particular area because the weather is perfect. It doesn't get lower than 80 degrees, it's sunny, it has a lot of moisture in the air, so they get perfect temperature of shade and humidity and warmth, and that's the perfect environment for cacao trees. Another cool thing is we source our beans from Indonesia, West Africa, and Brazil. So that three combination is the blend that we use for our chocolate. And let's get into a closer up look at the tree and see how it grows. So I have right here a cocoa pod. And this is going to be what it looks like when they cut it off. This is dehydrated. So I kind of call it a shrunken head version because it's a little smaller than it would be if you pulled it right off the tree. It's kind of wrinkly. It's got all these deep wrinkles. It's kind of dehydrated, but listen really closely. The beans are still inside. So there's 45 to 60 beans in each pod. And the stem of the pod is really, really thick. Okay, so you can't, it doesn't fall off the tree when it's ripe. You can't just twist it and pull it off the tree. You have to use a machete to cut it off the tree because the stem is so thick. So they have to use a machete and cut that off just in the right way so they're not going to damage the tree. And then they're going to crack it open and get the beans out. And they just scoop them out by hand. And they're covered in this really gooey pulp. And there's a picture on our next slide of what that looks like. So it's really gooey and creamy looking. At this point, it is edible. So if you were to try it, it actually tastes, for me personally, I thought it tasted like mango. but also very acidic like a pineapple. So it's kind of a combination of the two, and the texture was very chewy on the pulp. It was just kind of like a chewy texture. But the bean, oh my gosh, the bean was extremely bitter. It was like eating a coffee bean, but it was stronger than that. And it's just kind of like the texture of a nut, like you're chewing a really hard nut. So that's kind of like what the texture was of it. So what they do with all of the beans, they keep all the pulp on there. They like leave it on, and it has so much sugar in it. That's going to help the fermentation process. So basically, they're going to sit out in the sun in a box method. They're going to pile them up in a box, and they're going to sit there for 5 days. And that burns off all of the pulp and really changes the acidicness of that bean and prepares it for chocolate making. Then the very last stage with the farmers is the sun drying table. So what this stage does is it really brings out all the moisture out. It completely dries the bean, and it kind of gives it a nice golden suntan. All this talk about chocolate makes me hungry for more chocolate. So let's go ahead and eat our next piece. This piece is really interesting. It's a mouthful of flavor. It's got a crunchy looking texture. It's bumpy. So it is probably going to have a nut in it. So this one's really bumpy. Let's go ahead and smell it. I do smell kind of like an earthiness to it. I do smell like it's definitely going to have a nut in it, but I also smell chocolate. I can't smell anything else. Let us know if you guys can smell anything else. All right, let's go ahead and take a bite. Okay, here we go. Someone guessed peanuts and caramel. Very close. It definitely has a nut in it, but this one has more of a, I would say more of an earthy tone to it for sure. This one is our pecan caramel rapture, one of our top sellers. It's really crunchy and buttery. This one goes into dairy, it goes into roasted, it goes into earthy, and it goes into nutty. My favorite part is the earthy tones. It really does have kind of like this wood flavor, or maybe even straw or hay. And it definitely goes into sweet aromatics, and that's because of the buttery caramel. It's really buttery, it's really smooth, and it's not hard caramel. That's another thing that's really fantastic about it. It does not stick to your teeth. It just melts in your mouth, and it has a little crunch in every bite, and that's very important. When they make this piece, they are very particular about how many nuts are on a patty. They want to make sure that each patty has the amount of nuts to where every time you take a bite, you're going to get a little bit of that pecan with the caramel. So the way this was created is they melt down the caramel, they create the caramel in the copper kettle gas heaters, and then they bring it over into our depositor. There's a machine, it's called an extruder, and they pour the caramel in. It drops the little caramel patties onto the conveyor belt. And then from there, it drops the nuts onto each little patty, and someone's watching to make sure that they have the right amount of nuts on there so that they're fully packed full of nuts. After that, they're then gonna go through a machine called the enrobing machine, which basically creates this blanket of chocolate enrobing it. And there is a tank full of chocolate. It pumps up into this trough, and then it creates this curtain of chocolate that's constantly flowing down. And the pieces are firm enough to where when they go through that hot curtain of chocolate, they're not going to, the shape's not going to change. They're not going to melt because the chocolate is perfectly tempered. So as it's going through, it's going to get completely covered with chocolate, and then it goes through a cooling tunnel and is hand packed at the end. All right, let's go ahead and cleanse our palate with a little bit of water, and then we're going to try another piece of chocolate. All righty, let's get into the next piece. We're gonna be trying peanut butter. So I have a fun food trick on this one. Hopefully you haven't taken a bite yet. What we're gonna do is we're gonna plug our nose, okay? So I know it sounds weird. Trust me, it's gonna be awesome. So go ahead and smell your chocolate. You can really smell that roasted peanut butter. Even if it wasn't shaped like a peanut, you'd be able to smell that roasted peanut butter. All right, so let's go ahead and hold our nose shut, kind of like you're going underwater for the first time and you always plug your nose. So that's what you're gonna do. You're gonna plug your nose completely shut, and then you're gonna take a bite, chew a couple times, think about the texture and taste, and then unplug your nose. Hold it for as long as you can though. Okay, here we go. Oh my God, it smells so good. Wow. Oh my gosh. It surprises me every time. I never get tired of doing that. Oh my God, it's so fun. The roasted flavor that you get when you unplug your nose, you can tell it's peanut butter. You can kind of taste it when your nose is plugged, but then when you release, it's just so much more intense, just like in your face, like pow, roasted peanuts. So delicious. So, so fun to do. Let us know what you guys thought. So let's talk about what category it goes into. For me, definitely goes into roasted. Definitely very smooth, very decadent. The texture, right, is super, super creamy. Absolutely. It goes a little hint of vanilla. I like that baseball game. That's fun. It does. It has that like smell to it, you know, like everybody has different smells and feelings, and smell often can bring up memories for you too. So like, you know, oh, this reminds me of grandma's house and when she was making the cookies, and or the baseball game, you know, like it's going to remind you of all of those fun things. And it's just so, so cool. So thank you guys for sharing in that chat box. I really appreciate that. That's really cool. But yeah, this one has lots of roasted flavor, right? Super, super delicious. It does have an earthy tone. It kind of has kind of like a woody flavor. Yeah, and our peanut butter, let's talk about how we create that. So we don't order it already made. We make it ourselves from scratch. We get our peanuts from Georgia, and they're roasted there and vacuum sealed in a special way to where they can't age. We usually get the peanuts like 2 days later. Sometimes we re-roast it to bring out more flavor. And every time they're making this, it just smells like peanut butter. It's so cool. So the roasting technique that they use, fun fact, is the same roasting technique they use in the peanuts in Snicker bars. So they grind the peanut after they roast it. They grind it fresh on site every single time. And they grind it in a way to where it still has that kind of, you know, a little bit of texture to it. You know, you can tell that it's creamy, but it's not creamy like a store-bought brand of peanut butter where it's so creamy you can't tell that it's made out of peanuts. Like this one has that kind of somewhat grittiness, and that's what we want it to have, because you know it is like natural peanut butter. It is so amazing. It's one of my favorite pieces. I absolutely love it. If I get really hungry, this is like my go-to piece. So delicious. Love it. It's so good. So this also is the one-shot depositor process. So basically there's 2 tanks. One will be filled with the peanut butter. The other tank is filled with the chocolate shell, and they intertwine with a nozzle system. So there's an inside nozzle connecting to the filling. The outside nozzle connects to the chocolate shell, and then it goes into the mold at the exact same time and does the filling and the chocolate shell all at once. It's really, really cool. It takes like 60 seconds per mold. And then after it's filled, it's going to go through our cooling tunnel where it'll chill for about 45 minutes. And then when it comes out, they are hand packed. That part is really fun to watch too, because at the end, there's like this robotic arm that has suction cup plates, and they go down and suction cup onto the chocolate and bring it out, and then it switches over. It's really cool to see that part. All right, well, let's see. We have another piece, and then we're going to learn some more fun facts about how chocolate is created. So let's dive on into this next piece, shall we? This one is the almond butter crisp. So you're going to go ahead and take off that wrapper. And you'll notice that the inside is really bumpy, lots of texture here. This one has a lot of texture. It's really firm. It's got a little bit of chocolate on it underneath those nuts. Let's go ahead and smell it and see what we can smell. Very earthy, kind of like, I smell like hay, but I also smell lots of butter. I can't smell the chocolate, but again, everybody's senses are different. So, you know, let us know what you guys are, what you're smelling, what you're tasting. Let's go ahead and take a bite. Nice snap. Really buttery, very crunchy. But at the same time, it's like it's melting in your mouth, even though it's crunchy. Not understanding how that happens. It's just amazing. Every time I take a bite of it, it's like, it's crunchy, but it melts in your mouth because there's so much butter and delicious flavor there. So, so good. So let's see, what category would we put this one in? I'm gonna say nutty, dairy, and roasted. I agree with all the highlighted spots. It definitely has kind of like a honey flavor to it. Toasted, toffee, caramel. Definitely dairy because of all that buttery flavor. And yeah, I agree with that. That is so good. I love the texture of it. How it's crunchy, buttery, it melts in your mouth, but it has that kind of like little tiny almonds. And let's talk about how this piece was created while you guys are enjoying it. So this piece is melted down in our copper kettle gas heaters. They melt down all the ingredients for the toffees, and then they're going to pour it onto the table. And our tables are designed to where they have cold water going through them. So they can change the temperature of the table. So they can cool it very slowly or very quickly, depending on what they're cooling. So that's really cool. They also have like these little framed edges. So once they pour it on and smooth it out, it's gonna perfectly frame every edge of the toffee. So that way, all the way to the edge of the table, we're gonna be able to use it. There's no scrap there. And they have like this rolling pin with blades on it, like these round rolling blades, which is really cool. And they are able to score it. And what that means is basically they're gonna cut it one direction and then they're gonna flip it over and go the other way. And that creates a perfect squared piece every single time. And they can adjust those blades so they can cut different things. So it has a perfect shape every time they cut, which is really cool. After that, they're gonna break it up by hand. They put it on the conveyor belt to go through the curtain of chocolate to get smothered. And then they have a cookie sheet tray with the crushed almonds, all right? So they're gonna put on the pieces, they go through the enrober and get covered on all sides, and then they're gonna have a tray and they're gonna hand toss all the pieces. They're gonna come out with a batch, they're gonna let that batch land on the cookie sheet of crushed almonds. They hand toss it to make sure it's completely coated. They set that tray aside, get the next tray, and catch the next batch. So they're constantly hand tossing them. And then they're foiled, but they're hand squeezed. Each one gets a little hug to make sure that that foil is on there so that you get all of those crushed nuts, which is fantastic. All right, we have for you some more fun facts about how chocolate is created. So let's get into the beans and how do they turn it into the chocolate? How does it happen? Let's get into it. Let's look at this bowl of beans that I have. Doesn't that look delicious? It looks very interesting, doesn't it? These are going to be really bitter if you were to eat one. And the cool thing about these are that beans are 50% cocoa butter and 50% cocoa solid. So what we're going to do is we're going to sort our beans first. And I'm going to break this open so you can really see what it looks like on the inside. Let me do it right here so you can see. When you peel this off, it is just a very thin, it's a very thin shell. It kind of is almost like the skin of a peanut. It, like when you crack open a peanut shell and it has like a skin, it's just like a skin. And then inside is the bean there. Let me see if I can get the focus. Look at that. Isn't that cool? It's like really dark brown on the inside of the bean. This is the color that we're looking for. This is what we would want when we're making our selections. So we have to sort through our beans And the way we do that is we have this really cool device. It's like a little plate and the beans fit perfectly in it. And then we shut it, we slice through it, cutting them in open. So basically cutting them all in half. And then we can look inside and see what is going on. So we want the dark brown beans. We don't want anything pink. We don't want anything that has that fleshy brown color on the outside. We want it to be a dark, dark, rich brown. That is the perfect bean. It's been fermented completely. So we're gonna source all those beans, bag them up, ship them to Elizabethtown. That's where they get roasted to bring out the flavor. And then they get ground into what's known as a chocolate liquor. So this is 100% bean at this point. It's liquid beans. Beans, again, are 50% cocoa butter, 50% cocoa solid. And what that means is that it's already so buttery, we don't have to add anything to it to get it to turn into a liquid. We just have to keep grinding it and applying that pressure and grinding until it becomes smooth. I actually got a chance to try a drop of this. And when I mean a drop, I literally mean like one tiny little drop. It was so intense and so bitter. It was very, very, it was like coffee grounds and leather and tobacco all in one. Extremely earthy, very interesting. But I could also still tell that it was chocolate, which was really cool. So when they're mixing it up, they're going to add in some milk and some sugar. They're going to regrind it and blend it, and then it creates the milk dark and white chocolate that we all love and know. From there, it's going to get shipped to us, and then that's where we temper our chocolate. So we're going to heat the chocolate up for a particular period of time. For each chocolate, it's slightly different. So then we're going to slowly cool it down to a lower temperature, and then we're going to cover it. And if you look closely at the machine here, the enrober, that's how we cover all of the firm centers, the ones I was telling you about earlier. This is the carton of chocolate that you're seeing being poured onto those creams there. If you look at what it's sitting on, there's like a wire conveyor belt. And so all the chocolate that's falling down, it just falls back down into the tank. Nothing is being wasted. It just falls back down in the tank and then comes right back up into the carton of chocolate, and then the pieces go through and get covered. So let's go into the dark side, shall we? And get into some more chocolate. Alrighty, our next piece is our prickly pear. So notice the beautiful color on this piece. This one's really, really cool. It has that really beautiful kind of like red color, very similar to the prickly pear fruit. So let's go ahead and smell this piece. I smell flowers. It just smells like a flower to me. It's very tropical though. Very, very floral. This is a fun piece. If you've never had prickly pear before, it's very interesting when you have it for the first time. A lot of people will guess it's some kind of fruit, but they're not quite sure what kind of fruit it is. So definitely use that chop box and let us know what flavor you get when you first take a bite. So let's go ahead and take a bite. I just smell flowers. It's so cool. This one's a little runny, by the way. It's a little messy. I'm gonna get my napkin ready. Wow. This one is so interesting, right? It goes into fruity and it kind of reminds us of raspberry. I'm also getting like a strawberry kind of flavor from it. Very, very floral too. Definitely goes into citrus blossom, kind of perfumey. This one's really, really good. And that rich dark chocolate kind of comes in towards the end. It's kind of like it's a smooth kind of mocha flavor combined with the prickly pear, I think. I'm getting kind of like a mocha, like a raspberry mocha flavor. Ooh, that's so good. So good. This one's very intense, you know, it's like very like full of like all these different layers of flavor, and it's just so unique. We get the prickly pear is basically a fruit puree that we get from a Bazaar food specialist. And we do have a prickly pear in our garden, but we do not source from our garden. It's just not large enough to source from. But we have a picture up on the screen of what that looks like when they're growing a lot of the prickly pear. You can see where we got the color from that pear. Kind of reminds me of the song from Jungle Book. Don't pick a prickly pear by the claw. When you pick a pear, you got to use the claw. I don't know. It just always makes me think of that song. It's one of my favorites. But yeah, this is a really intense piece. Again, this is a molded piece, but let's talk about how they get the color on. So I know you guys are wondering about that. Like, how does that work? So what that is a cocoa butter coloring. So before, oh, I just realized I still have a little bit of chocolate on my face. I'm sorry. I'm a little messy when it comes to chocolate. I love it. So cocoa butter. What we do is we take the cocoa butter and we add in a cocoa butter coloring. And we have a specially designed airbrush gun, and we actually airbrush all of the molds by hand. We airbrush all of them. And then once that's set, then we can put it into the one-shot depositor. So there's 2 tanks. Again, one will have the prickly pear filling, one will have the chocolate shell. They intertwine into the nozzles, and they push the filling and the shell all in at the same time, and then it would chill. And what happens in the cooling process is the cocoa butter that we sprayed onto the mold is already cold. We put the chocolate in, and then it melts together. As it's cooling, when it comes out, it's kind of like a transfer sheet. It just comes right off onto the piece. So that's why when you look at your piece, it has that beautiful, beautiful coloring, but on the bottom is just the chocolate. So that's another cool way we design our pieces. It also helps you identify like what the piece is based on like the color or maybe the sprinkles that are on top of it. It'll help you identify the piece, and that also helps figure out which one is which. All right, we're down to our last piece, guys. We're already at the end. I don't want it to be over. I'm having so much fun. All right, our next piece is our raspberry satin cream. And this one is got the dark chocolate, but it also has milk chocolate on it. So you can see that it has like the little milk chocolate drizzle right there. That is a machine called the Stribiner. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, but let's go ahead and smell our chocolate. Dark chocolate, I love it. I can actually smell the filling with this. Most of the time, the dark chocolate's so strong, I just smell the roasted dark chocolate. But this one does have a scent of kind of almost like cherry. Like the combination of the raspberry and the dark chocolate kind of smell like cherry at first. So let's go ahead and take a bite. Again, if you haven't done the news trick, this is a fun one to try it on. It's our last piece, so let's go ahead and try that. We're gonna smell, hold our nose, and then take a bite. Wow, this one's intense. It's got just the right amount of tart and sweet to really bring out all of that fruity raspberry. Kind of makes your mouth water for more. Very, very delicious. Definitely goes into fruity, definitely goes into dairy, but my favorite part is that espresso roasted flavor at the end. So delicious. Also goes into floral. It has a little bit of that kind of like flower flavor there. Maybe I'd say like lavender. Lavender. That's a cool one. All right, so this piece is created with the extruder. So basically the filling, when they make it, it's gonna look like caramel. Then they're gonna put it in this machine. This machine is specially designed for Ethel M factory. It's designed to blend the buttercreams the way that Ethel did. So what she would do is she would like cool it down very slowly. and then gradually fold in the filling. So this is designed that when we put the fruit puree into the buttercream base, it's going to slowly just kind of like fold in very slow as it's turning. And as it's turning, it's also creating this cooling process. So it's slowly cooling as it's turning. And because of the way that it's cooling and mixing, it's going to get this really thick, fudgy texture. So in the photo here, it's kind of like this really bright red. And that's what it looks like when we first put the fruit puree in. It's very concentrated. And so it looks like caramel. Then all of a sudden it looks like this dark red color. And then as it's cooling, it gets that light, fluffy pink color that you see inside your piece. And then they go through the extruder, which is going to shape the round little mounds of filling. And then they're going to go through that enrobing machine and get covered. After it cools, it goes through this stribbon design. So certain pieces will have a stribbon on it. And this one has a very particular pattern. It has kind of like an interlaced design. And that's because each piece has its own unique design to that flavor. And so it depends on how fast the conveyor belt is moving and what pattern it is shaking in. It might go back and forth really slow, or it might go in a circular motion. And just those subtle movements will change the way the chocolate is falling, causing the different designs on the piece. So it's super fascinating to watch it go through. Very, very cool. All right, well, that was our last piece. I'm gonna hand it back to Lauren. She's gonna tell you about all the up and coming cool things that we have. Please let us know which one was your favorite piece. I'm dying to know which one was your favorite. My personal favorite today was, I'd have to say, the prickly pear. Normally I go with peanut butter, but today it was the prickly pear. It was a wower for me today. So definitely let us know what one your favorite was. I'm gonna hand it back to Lauren. She's gonna tell us about some specials coming up. And if you have any questions, feel free to let us know, okay guys?
Yes, so Tammy Jo, we do have a few questions for you before you head away. Why is the ABK wrapped?
Good question. Okay, so the ABK is wrapped for 2 reasons. One is to help with allergens. Some people are allergic to almonds, but they're not allergic to pecans or something like that. So we foil it to keep all those crushed almonds on the piece. And that's the other reason, is we want to make sure that it helps eliminate cross-contamination for allergens, and it also keeps all of those crushed almonds that we want on there to stay on there. So sometimes when we're packing it in the box and then we pack it into the trays, sometimes because when you pick it up, it kind of does crumble a little bit very easily. We don't want you guys to get a piece that has lost all its almonds, so we wrap it and foil it tight. Each one actually gets a little hand squeeze to make sure it's complete. So that way all those almonds stay on there.
Love it. I know, I remember you saying it gets a hand hug, and I've never forgotten each piece has a hand hug.
I heard that from one of the factory workers. They said that when it's a foil machine, but at the end, they hug each piece, make sure it's
so funny.
Sealed.
And then before we go into our next question, that is so funny. Our prickly pear was one of the most popular as well. And that was your favorite tonight. My favorite is probably the peanut butter and the rapture. So those were the other two. We had a lot of raspberry satin creams, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is actually one of the original recipes from Ethel Mars. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. So that's awesome. And Kathy said, when can we come visit you, Tammy Jo, in Vegas? And our factory's open. So please come visit us. Tammy Jo basically is always there. She has been for the past 20 years. She's never left. So come visit anytime. She's here to teach you about stuff. And a lot of the time we have our factory workers in there making different pieces, so she can kind of talk to you about that as well. And then Tammy Jo, do you know how many beans it takes to make one piece of chocolate? Or how many beans are in a cocoa pod? Either one.
There's 45 to 60 beans inside one pod. So in one pod, there's 45 to 60 beans in here. I'm not quite sure how many beans it takes to make one piece. I have never gotten like an accurate answer on that, like a definite. I answered that question, but I do know there's roughly 45 to 60 beans in a pod.
And it probably varies on the piece as well, how much chocolate you're using for each piece and everything like that. So
yeah, and then they have to force through and pick out the ones that are perfectly fermented. And then or roast and grind. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how many it takes. Maybe someday I'll find out, but right now I don't know the answer to that one.
Yes, we'll get back to you on that. So
Okay.
thank you so much. I do want to let you all know about some upcoming tastings we have. We have one on the 17th coming up, and that is using our 2 classic samplers, which is 5 pieces each. I recommend getting both for yourself so you have one to try with us and then one to try for later. But if you want, you can share. That's your choice. But then also, I know Robin asked when we're going to do a liqueur tasting. And I love that you asked that because that's coming up in October, and that's going to be featuring our brand new packaging, which if you don't follow us on social media, go check out our last post. The packaging that we just released is absolutely beautiful, and it's recyclable and reusable. So if you all want to have a discount code to purchase some of our new packaging, we also upgraded our website as well. So take a look at ethelm.com and use the discount code virtual at checkout. You'll get 15% off all of our brand new packaging. I promise you, when you see it in person, you will be amazed and you're never going to want to throw it away. You're going to want to keep all the chocolate in there. It's so beautiful. So yes, we have a liqueur tasting in October. And for our November lighting, as a reminder, again, it is November 6th to January 3rd. But we're going to turn on the lights for the first time of the season on November 6th. And we're going to give you updates on our Instagram and Facebook and via email. And it is so much fun. So I'm excited for you all to see that this year. So with that, I hope you all have a very safe weekend. Hope you have fun for Labor Day. And I hope to see you on the 17th for our next tasting. Thank you.
Hi, everybody.